You move it too fast. You shouldn't move it that fast.
You're right.
As well as the extra. You gotta be able to get on and off the
You okay, man? You okay?
I'm just fine, I guess. Well, I guess it depends on if we ever get to the grocery store.
Yeah, that sounds
Like it's be cheeseburger.
well, here's what I'll do. I'll go and eat out tonight, and then invariably we will go to the store and make something that I'm gonna like.
That's good. Maybe if you plan it that way, then I'm making cheeseburgers regardless. Yeah, I'm set. I have that thought out.
Well, in that case, I'm going to I don't know. I have this.
I know every time I decide I'm going on to go there eat some little, I'm hungry. And I get frustrated.
You know, I got the last break of the day.
Europe. Nice.
You gonna make me a picture of him? If I like, I'll put him in my.
Decatur.
The wheel, Thomas.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess the money they just making now. That's what.
Yeah, what they survive, I
You want me
guess.
to make you a picture?
Yeah, hold on. Hit that sign.
What are you looking at? Oh, the
Yeah, I was looking at.
hey, right there.
Huh?
That's it. Right there.
See.
Yep. Oh, you recording me? Recording.
Right. Yeah, that's the home. Map. There it is. Come on. So you sail with the ship too?
I am a crew here.
True. Should I ask how's the food?
Food's pretty good. We had some really good chicken Alfredo last night.
That's good. So y'all don't eat one a day, huh?
No, we get 3 meals a day.
So y'all go to Decatur next?
Yep.
Maybe I should have waited then, because Decatur ain't but 20 minutes from me.
How far did you guys try to get here?
About an hour and 6 minutes.
ahead on that end. Well, it's up to that. They had a couple of officers that would be out there, as well as the master on board. Right here. That's about as long as you are in there. Put that on the cyber and carry around with you. How high? Oh, it looks like it's about 5 feet now. Yeah, that's about what it is. Now back then though, it would have been a bit taller than that because they didn't have the sole down there, that extra floor. Right in the center part down there. But the stuff on the bottom is going to be wet. So you gotta keep that in mind. That's it. That's what I seen you got pumps running pulling water out. That's cooling for the air conditioning these days. We're not sinking that fast. Back then though, it would have been a 7-year-old with a leather bucket. That's what I was wondering. Yeah, going down there, getting a bucket full and tossing it over the side. Real pleasant. Along with, all the animal waste. Bring up food and water for the crew, hopefully in a different bucket. Depends on whether or not he likes the crew, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So right now this is Pinta. So she is built 20% larger than the original vessel. Just bear that in mind while you're walking aboard. Nina over there, she is exact size to the original. So she is pretty much as close to the original as you're ever going to get. She was built entirely by hand in a shipyard in Brazil, finished in 1991. Pinta was finished 14 years later in that same yard, built almost entirely by hand, but they did use a few modern tools. Used a drill press, a crane to lower the mast in, and a lathe for some of the round parts like the windlass. Now, as far as the original Nina and Pinta are concerned, we don't know their exact date of construction, probably sometime in the 1480s. Both are caravels, a shallow, fast, coastal fishing and trading vessel that would have been used for a variety of purposes in the 15th century. Christopher Columbus planned on sailing west to go around to get east to make his way to Asia, and he had initially requested 2 caravels and a larger vessel, a now ordered carrack, which is exactly what he got. These 2 were the caravels. The Santa Maria, on the other hand, like you see in the case there, she was the larger cargo vessel. To cross the Atlantic, you see this is the map of the first voyage here. From Palos to the Canary Islands was about 9 days. They spent a little bit of time doing repairs. Most of the important works were re-rigging Nina to have all square sails to take advantage of the prevailing winds. With the prevailing winds, it was a 33-day trip across the Atlantic Ocean to the Bahamas. Now that was his slowest time crossing. His quickest was 20 days, which was on his 4th voyage. On average, he could do it in about a little over 3 weeks, so a very quick and efficient way of crossing across. The Santa Maria did not survive that first voyage. She had run aground on the north coast of Haiti, breaking her keel. It's part of the reason why we don't have her. The other reason being she would be so large she could not fit the same place we go to either. But the Nina and Pinta made it there and back without a hitch. Pinta's captain was a man named Martin Alonso Pinzon, did not like Christopher Columbus. By extension, I do not believe her owner, Cristobal Quintero, liked Columbus either. So Pinta did not go on any more than just that first voyage. Nina, on the other hand, went out of 3 of his 4 voyages. She was part of a fleet of 17 ships on the second voyage. I ended up being the only survivor of a hurricane in 1495. Had to transport 121 men back to Spain on her decks. She also went with Columbus on his 3rd voyage, had gotten captured by pirates shortly before and recaptured by her crew just in time to go on that 3rd voyage to South America. After the 3rd voyage, she was sold to help Christopher Columbus fund his 4th voyage. Where she went after that, we aren't quite sure. We know that she was said to be making a trip somewhere to the coast of West Africa. We don't know what happened after she departed, if she made it, if she didn't, or what. A caravel like this typically would have a lifespan of about 30 years at a time. So after that lifespan, your inboard pieces like your keel or ribs would start to rot and most likely would have been scrapped for timber.
What kind of food do they normally eat?
Typically it was dried, pickled, salted, or preserved fare. Things like salt beef, salt pork, dried fish, lentils, beans, hardtack biscuits or ship's biscuits. They would not have safe water to drink, so they were drinking a lot of wine mixed with water. If they ran out of wine, they would mix vinegar with it. You'd have 1 hot meal a day, weather permitting. That would be cooked in a small brass cook stove near the bow of the vessel called a fogon. It would have high sides and hot coals in the bottom. That meal would just be served out communally in the same pot to the men. Wouldn't have individual bowls or spoons. The sailors' only utensil would be a multi-purpose knife they also used for cutting and splicing in the rigging. So they would serve it to the officers first. They would dip their hand and their knife in, eat out of it, and then the men would have what was left over.
Okay, what's the average men that they had on board?
So as far as just kind of a demographic, these guys would have been on average somewhere between 15 to late 20s. The youngest could have been as young as 7. They would have had a couple of ship's boys on board who were very young men who would go down below, clean up after the food, water, and livestock below. I should mention below was only for cargo storage, with the exception of a very small captain's quarters. All the men were eating, sleeping, and living out on the decks there, so they didn't really have any place to get shelter from the elements. The average guy on board would have had, at least 1 previous sailing trip somewhere, usually more. If they would have had a few different sailing trips, 1 or 2, had a little bit of experience, would have been what you called a grommet. Not necessarily an experienced sailor, but a man that can at least do work on a vessel. If he was a very experienced, he would be called a mariner, and their pay would be determined by which one of those ratings they would have. In addition, you would have plenty of officers, a pilot who was responsible for steering the vessel and would be the equivalent of a first mate today. You would have a master who was responsible for directing how the sails ought to be trimmed, a captain who would be responsible for overseeing the whole of the vessel, and in the case of the Santa Maria later on the Nina on the return trip, you would have Christopher Columbus as the admiral. There would also be a few specialized members of the crew as well, a surgeon, who was not necessarily a doctor, kind of a quack if you would have considered it, but at least he would be able to stitch you up, cut your hair, or what have you. They would have a carpenter for repairing anything in the rigging or whatnot. They'd also have a marshal who would be responsible for maintaining the weapons and giving a whooping to whoever disobeyed the captain's orders. Most of these guys are fairly young. Being a sailor was one of those professions back in the day, like it is today. It paid decently well, but at the same time was very dangerous and very hard work. So a sailor might either, probably would try and attempt to find some better line of work if he could. Columbus's voyages were known to pay exceptionally well, so a lot of these guys that went on the first voyage with him would end up going on multiple voyages with Christopher Columbus over that 12-year period. It's kind of hard to gauge an exact life expectancy for these guys because, as you got older, the chances of you surviving into old age increased very significantly. If you were going to die, it was going to be while you were young and stupid. So that kind of tends to skew the numbers a little bit, or especially when you consider things like child and infant mortality, make it look like people died a lot younger than the surviving ones actually would.
So what do they do in their free time?
Well, most of the time it would be personal maintenance work. So when they would be working, it would be 4 hours at a time actually steering the vessel. And then you might have 4 hours doing ship maintenance work, helping the carpenter out, helping to repair the rigging. And then you would have 4 hours of doing your own personal work, which might involve eating and sleeping if it's nighttime, bless you. Or if it's during the daytime, you might be doing things like sewing together a set of clothes for yourself, putting the buttons back on, talking with the other crew, making fenders or other personal trinkets or items. The officers really did not like the men to, just gossip with each other. They were worried that might ferment a mutiny. These men couldn't read and write, no books for them. They did not like them to gamble, so no dice or cards. So these guys were pretty bored, to say the least, for most of the trip. And that's possibly one of the reasons why they almost did attempt a mutiny day 30 of the first voyage.
Gotcha. That sounds good to me, thank you.
We will ask all our sailors to learn the king of knots, the bowline, which is, let's see, I should have some. Darn, hold on.
Gotcha.
And it's a really nice knot because it's fairly easy to tie, right over left. Then the line that's in your right hand now comes up over the left side, comes back through, and is pulled tight.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the trick with it is, if it's made correctly, it will never slip. You can pull this until you can no longer, physically put any more strength on it, otherwise it'll break, and the knot will not come undone or slip from its place. And you can still get it undone at that point by taking this right here, basically the knot's neck, breaking the neck, it just comes right apart.
Okay.
So that is the most important knot that we ask all the people who volunteer aboard to learn.
Okay. Is any other knots that they need to know or be familiar with?
We will teach all the other ones if you decide to stick on beyond 4 weeks.
And what other knots?
They're on the board. There's a
Right.
good chunk of them. Thieves knot, reef knot, which are variations on a square knot. Just depends on which way you tie it. Hitches are another really important one that we use quite frequently. That's kind of it for the most important ones.
Right. Gotcha. So what knot are you doing there?
This is, I believe, a reef knot. And then it's just where so the other one was a thieves knot. This is a reef knot.
Gotcha. Okay. So how fast does the ship goes?
She has a rated hull speed of 13 knots, or about 14.5 miles an hour.
Okay, gotcha. And that's with the regular sails, or
Yep, under full sail.
Gotcha. Okay. All right then.
We prefer to go under sail. We go faster that way. Plus,
Gotcha.
more fuel efficient. Under full sail, we'll make about 3,000 miles to the galleon.
Mm-hmm.
But
Gotcha. All right. You want to give me the tour of the boat, this here, so I can...
sure. So this is La Pinta. Pinta, our replica of her, has been upscaled by 20%. So she is 15 feet longer, 6 feet wider, and about 2 feet taller than she should be.
Mhm.
That's due to the fact that we as people are now on average 20% larger than they were 500 years ago. The average male 15th century Spaniard was 5'2", whereas today it's 5'10". And I stay even taller than that at 6'3". 6'4" if I'm wearing boots. This was also the ship that Columbus was on the least frequently, due to the master of this ship, Martin Alonso Pinzon, hating his guts. He was only along because the king and queen told him to. But this was also the ship that sighted land first as well, on the 32nd day of traveling across the Atlantic.
Gotcha.
And I live aboard Pinta, but we do have crew aboard Nina, and she is the most accurate replica of a Columbus airship ever built. She is built to scale and the same way.
Got you. Okay. Don't give me the tour of the boat, or just
Well, it's self-guided right now.
It's
If you have any
self-guided.
question, so I will answer.
On each side, so 6 crew members on each ship, plus the captain will make 7 on each ship. So full crew is 14. Our captain has a sea dog. His name is Oben. He's the 8th member, but I don't have to cook for him. He brings food for him. But he's got 4 sea legs, and he's been in some rough seas ever since he's been a puppy. So he gets around on the ship and does just fine. And you know how he's got? How you know he's got sea legs? If he's on the ship, you look down there, you can see him.
yes, sir.
So y'all have restroom facilities?
We have a head that goes to a holding tank, and so we got air conditioning and heat down below. At night we turn our generator on. Normally, if we're in a dock, we have shore power. So we will actually be hooked up to that. But we turn it off so it's not noisy when you guys are on the ship. If that's the case. It's not too bad. So it starts getting a little warmer down there late in the day. So we turn on about 5. Usually it's not the case where we don't have shore power. Usually you can get an electrician to hook into a light pole and run the cord down to us, or a power pole that we plug into.
It's hard to sleep when it's really hot, so I'm wondering.
Yeah. It's I slept on the deck one night when the air conditioning was giving us trouble, because up in Clarksville there was so much debris in the water coming down, and it's a heat exchange recirculating pump that works. So you got debris in the supply line, so they seem to work. So I was sleeping on the upper deck here one night, and it got warmer and warmer, so I ended up laying on the settee in Pinta because theirs was working fine. But that's just a minor inconvenience.
I know y'all sleep down there, but when it's pouring down, raining, what do you do?
We were on a line from the mast to the mast up there, and then we have a tent that goes over top of us.
Yeah, keep it from.
That keeps the water pretty much out. And there's a little dripping down there. It's not bad.
Gotcha.
Later on in the 1700s would actually contract or commission a sculptor to do figureheads for the fronts of the ship. The owners of the ships usually would not fund that. So if he wanted something like that on the ship he was going to be sailing in his career, he would pay for that out of his own pocket. And usually he would have the sculptor do 2 pieces, one for the front of the ship and then one for his cabin. And back in the day, the 16s, 15s, 1600s, they didn't have photographs or anything other than maybe a painting. And paintings were pretty fragile in a water environment. So they would have something carved that would be a little bit more durable and be able to stand the weather of the sea.
Awesome.
Yeah, the sword is a replica sword of what Columbus might have been given during his coronation as Admiral of the Ocean Sea. It's got the Leon cross, Castile and Leon symbols up on the very top, which that's the 2 sides of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella's family. And then the F is for King Ferdinand and the Y is for Queen Isabella. Of course, they practiced Christianity, so they had a cross on the sword also. And that'd be the symbols that are actually on the same flag that we see up on the very front of our ship. And that flag would fly over to the castle of Leon and Castile in Spain, and then that would, if it's flying on the front of a ship, that flag means pirate beware, because it's on a direct mission from the king and queen.
Oh,
And if you
gotcha.
mess around with the ship, there's going to be some guys that are going to be paid enough money to come get you. So, pirate beware. Some of them aren't that smart.
And how about this coin here? Or is that a coin? Or?
It's a piece of 8
down to the
gold
bottom
coin,
of the ship.
and it's a replica coin. Usually we got them in our store, but maybe out now. But they would actually cut those up in pieces of 8. And sometimes they try and get 9 pieces out of it. So you had to actually weigh them, or that's the reason why they would bite the coin too.
Right.
That's all. All right, appreciate it.
So why did they cut them up for 9 pieces?
Because if you wanted to buy a loaf of bread, you didn't want to give them a whole piece of 8 because you're probably going to be in the area for enough time to collect enough bread for that whole piece.
Gotcha.
So if you live locally, you just give one of them to the baker, and you got enough bread for a month,
Gotcha.
or whatever you needed to do. You always had an account going pretty much with the local vendors. If you had need something from a blacksmith and you didn't have a piece of 8 where you get change back, and they didn't really like to give you change back. They like to keep them whole if they can. And so they would actually just to have an account going. Okay, you had 2 pieces of 8, to do that last job, so you got credit.
Yeah.
Fire 1. Fire in the hole. Boom. That boat has a main on it. Let's go left. Here we go, officer. That's Huntsville's their boyfriend, girlfriend, write their name on it. carve her name in it?
No. You for real, John?
I love Illinois.